All right, guys, we're going to continue where we left off. So, the next building on our list is the 157 building. Now, let me see. 157 building. So, that's going to be 1,000. I have it down as 1,005 feet. I don't know why. In Wikipedia, I think they've been changing their stuff after the fact because they have it as 1,004 feet. But that would be this building right here. Now, this one is right overlooking Central Park, and it is one of the new very tall buildings. It actually towers over a lot of other buildings, obviously not the ones that I just mentioned, but there's a lot of buildings that it towers over. And like I said, you can get a good look at it here because I definitely feel that it fits in, look up a picture of it, and it came out pretty good. I know it's a simple thing. You're like, well, that's not even hard to do, but just even making sure that it fit where you had one part of it was higher than the other, and then came down to a third part that was even lower. Obviously, you could see like there. So I thought that was interesting. That is the 157 building. It's spelled as the word one and then the number 57 building. Next, we have 70 Pine Street, which, let's see. This one should be, I'm just looking it up on, give me a moment as I look it up because I'm trying to find it on the Wikipedia page because I want to make sure I'm remembering which building is which. So I'm sorry about that. So bear with me. Like I said, I don't really want to pause the video if I can avoid it. 70 Pine is supposed to be 850 feet tall. And I can't find it. So bear with me. Okay, so I found it, and here's the thing about it, like I was mentioning before, which is funny about how sometimes they base things off the height of the structure and sometimes off the spire. So 70 Pine Street is actually, and it's a building I actually really like too. It's actually this one right here, and it very much resembles the Empire State Building for the most part. Now, it is seven it is 850 feet tall, but the spire is 952. But on Wikipedia, they measure it by the top of its spire. I have no clue why, and that kind of throws it off where, well, it's like it's cheating, it's getting the pass for cheating. But there you could see it there, and it very much resembles the Empire State Building in terms of the way that it looks. Like, So I like its design. There aren't too many that are like that. It is fairly tall within the range of comparing to other buildings, but obviously it's nowhere near the size of some of the really taller buildings. But that is 70 Pine Street. Now, obviously, 40 Wall Street, like I mentioned before. And here you could see 40 Wall Street, the top of it is taller than the base of the Pine Street one, even though the 70 Pine Street's antenna brings it, or spire brings it higher than the 40 Wall Street building. Then we have the Citigroup Center building, which is 915 feet. And once again, you guys, I'm sorry about if I'm all over the place with the video. This is not the kind of video that's like easy to do, but thank you for bearing with me. So the Citigroup Center is a very interesting one at 915 feet tall. That is this white one. And if you ever drove around in Manhattan, it's right off the side of the highway. So obviously this side right here of the edge of Manhattan would be like the FDR, and over there would be the West Side Highway on that end, that opposite end. But essentially, you could see this right off of the highway, and Citigroup Center, it's just like this. So if you go look it up online, you'll look at it and say, you know what, that building looks very much like the way it's supposed to look. And that's exactly how it looks. Another thing about that was very funny too is when you get to the bottom of it, it's hard to see the bottom of it because a lot of pictures tend to, it's hard to see because you got a lot of the buildings around it. But it comes down into this very small base like that. I think it has some little pillars going around it that are small, but not enough that I was able to fit in there without, it wouldn't have fit correctly putting that on there because it would have blocked the fact that it's just a stub at the bottom. But that is essentially what that building looks like. So if you go online right now and look it up, you would see that it looks just like that. And I had to make it in white because it really had to stand out, because to me, that building just stands out. It's all in white and that's how it looks. So what do we have next? We have the Trump World Tower at 861 feet. Let me see. So that one is this one. This is actually right next to the building that we just came from. That is 861 feet. So that's the exact shape of how it looks. It's like a basic building, nothing fancy about it. It's just squarish and tall, and that is it. Next, we have the City Spire Center at 814 feet. Let's see. City Spire. So this was actually interesting. Let me make sure that I'm looking at the right one. Yes. So it's this one right here at 814 feet. It's that one. And if you go look it up right now, you'll see it has that kind of roundabout top on it. So it was fitting. I had to order that off the Lego website to get that, but I really couldn't give that another type of top other than that because a squarish top just wouldn't have fit. It's a round type of top on the building. So that was a good look with that. Yeah, so that one came out pretty good, I thought. Though yeah, it came out pretty good. I think there's some things about it I might have to alter. I may have to alter bringing up the sides on it a little higher because some of the pictures that I look at makes it look like that. Let me just kind of check a photo real quick. Yeah, what threw me off guard is that I do think I might have to change it where it's got, the top part, then the shoulders, and it had another part of shoulders that seemed like they're probably about this height. So I may have to change that, and I will look into that later. But for the most part, the top of it looks the way that it's supposed to look, especially that dome top on the roof. So that came out pretty well. I think it came out pretty well. So next we have 28 Liberty Street, which is at 813 feet. Let me try to figure out where that is actually located because I'm not really sure right now off the top of my head. It should be at the bottom of Manhattan, and it should look kind of just squarish, just the way it's depicting it. Let me see. All right, I'm going to have to take a moment and pause real quick and then come back onto it because I am not seeing the shape and I want to make sure that I say it the correct. Okay, so the angles on the Wikipedia picture were kind of deceiving because it's looking from the ground up, but the 28 Liberty Street building is that glass one building that I built up like that. It has that kind of look to it when you're looking at it from the side. Those certain angles make it look almost black because when you're looking at it from pictures, because when you're looking from a down angle, it's reflecting, I guess, images of other things that are near it. But it has kind of like a look like a glass one like that when you look at some photos. So I went with that design. If you go look it up, you'll see that it does have for the most part, like a glass kind of look to it. So, I thought that came out pretty well. And like I said, that is 813 feet. Hold on one second. 813 feet high for that one. So, yes, and I actually lost my list of buildings right now, so I gotta bring it back up. I see tallest buildings. Like I said, bear with me because I don't want to be pausing the video that much. So that was in the 800 something feet range. Yes, Liberty. Okay. That was 813 feet. So now we're going to another building that I actually like a lot, that I think was done well. The one that I mentioned earlier before. The 4 Times Square building at 809 feet, but with a spire of 1,118 feet. And that is this building right here. And I think it came out so well. And I really, beg you to go and take a look at that. Look at a photo of it, Google a photo of it, and you'll see like it really came out very well. I really think it did, because when you go and look at it, what you see is there's like these circular parts right here, and then almost like this part that comes down just like that on the side of the building. It's funny that I happen to have a Lego piece to use to accommodate that, but it looks just like that. And then up here is almost like a boxed structure of like a kind of wire kind of box structure, and then you have the spire that comes above. It's very interesting. And then there is this portion of the building. I actually inverted these kind of colors, but there's a piece here that actually comes separate from that piece, even though this piece, when you look at it, looks more light and this part looks more dark. But that's just kind of the way I did it. But generally speaking, that same shape is how it looks on the photos. So if you go and take a look at that, you're going to see that that's how it looks. And it really came out very well. Like I said, 809 feet. And the spire brings it up to 1,118 feet, making it one of the tallest buildings just based on the spire, but its base height is a lot lower. So that's why you see I made it have so much of the antenna on it like that, because it really, the base of it is very short next to all the rest of these buildings. I mean, you see already how far down the list it was. No, well, actually, yes, it is far down the list based on the 809 feet, which is why I put it that low, because in Wikipedia, they classify it as, and this is just at the time of this video, the 38th tallest building. It's very low in Wikipedia because they're not counting the spire, even though, so that's why I put it so low on the list, even though the spire makes it a lot taller. But like I said, some of these buildings, they get the spire bonus, even though they shouldn't. So, that's just how they do it. Now, the next building is the MetLife building. And that's this right here. Everybody knows the MetLife building. That is exactly like the structure, how it looks. If you look at it from up top, it's a little more, how should I say, oval-like. But, this was a simple way of me trying to do that without getting too crazy with things. But then you have also this right here, which is Grand Central Station at the bottom of it. And from looking at it overhead, I was able to do it kind of the way that is depicted as best as I could. It has some aspects about it where certain parts are indented like that. I'm not sure if those are where there's glass that you would see down below, but yes. And then right here is essentially, 42nd Street going across here, because what's interesting is that right next to the base of MetLife building is the Chrysler building. I think it might be one block off. I'm not sure, but I think for the most part it is on the same block as that. But so is this is the Bank of America Tower. If I'm not mistaken, you can go back earlier into the other video, part 1, and I mentioned that. And then this one right here, which is the, as I just mentioned, the 4 Times Square building, which is right next to it. And then you go right into, I have Times Square here, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But essentially they all line up there. So even though this is not exact when it comes to where everything is placed, because I kind of condensed New York City, but at the same time, that little area right here of these like 4 buildings are like right there. So if you came at Grand Central Station, you would see this building to your side, and you would see the Chrysler building to your other side. So next, and that was 808 feet, the MetLife building. So next we have 731 Lexington at 807 feet, but the spire puts it at 938 feet. Now, I believe that that's going to be this building over here, but let me just check and confirm. 731 Lexington. Yep, that is this building right here. It was a simple build. and just with a spire on one end of it. It's not even on the center. It's actually on one end. That's all it is, to give it that little cheating height to be pretty tall. Not tall enough to be above too many other things, but keep in mind too, that's one of those buildings that they measure based on the architectural height and not off of the spire height. So, like I said, that is 807 feet, only 1 foot shorter than the MetLife building, which in my build, I didn't make them any different in height because 1 feet difference is not enough to, articulate one, that one is taller than the other. But the spire does give it a height of 938 feet. Next comes the Woolworth building, which is another one that I actually liked, if I can remember correctly. The Woolworth building, yes, 792 feet. Let me see, where is that one? Yes, okay, that one is over here. Now that one is very interesting too. That's this one right down here. That's interesting because it does come up with a pretty decent cone-like shape, even though it has like on each four corners little kind of pillars that are coming up, but they're too small to really articulate that into this build. But what's interesting also is that it's not like a structure that is equal on all sides and footing. It is kind of where the tower piece is off to the side, and then the rest of the build like is lower. So it's funny, like when you look at it from a different angle, some angles try to shoot it where it's like from that angle, so you're seeing it like it looks like it just goes straight up and it's a line, but then when you go on the side of the building, it's not. So that's interesting. But I like that building because it actually stood out, and if you watch pictures of it, you look at pictures of it, you're going to see it's a very unique building, very similar to the 40 Wall Street building in terms of the way the pictures look, but here I can only build it but so much in terms of how different it would be. But it still is a different looking building amongst the rest of these buildings, so I enjoyed that. Now comes the One Worldwide Plaza, which is 778 feet, and that is no, that is this one over here. And let me just look at the, let me just bring it up to make sure, but I'm like 90% sure that's the location of it. Yes, because it's not far from Central Park. So that is that one right there. And if you look it up, it came out pretty well. It has this big cone on it that's really wide. It's almost similar to the 40 Wall Street in its design, but the 40 Wall Street's cone is a lot more slimmer, but not a spire like, even though the tip of it is supposed to be, and I couldn't articulate that. This one is actually looks just like that, very wide and broad. So that one, like I mentioned, is 778 feet. So now you see we're coming below, for a little while now, we've been below the 1,000 mark, even though some of the antennas have been bringing some of them up a little high. But yes, so that was that structure, and it's pretty symmetrical all around to some degree. But yes, that one was another one that I think is very unique, and I like the way it stands out in the build because it's definitely different. And then next we have the Time Warner Center, which is 750 feet tall. Let me scroll down just to make sure how the building looks. Okay, so that one is, okay, so I had to quickly look this up real quick, and the Time Warner Center, it's a full building that has like, so this is it over here. It's got other structures in it, like the bottom area is almost like a little mall or something like that. But the thing about it is just the towers themselves have a specific name to them. One of my buildings is kind of coming up. It has a specific name to them, and it's called the Duchess Bank Center Tower, North Tower, and then the Duchess Bank Center South Tower. But essentially the whole building structure, because they're connected at the base, is called the Time Warner Center at 750 feet. Now that is actually right at Columbus Circle. If anyone's familiar in New York City, that very corner of Central Park, you have this big little circle that you can drive around, and I think there's a fountain in the middle. And this is the structure that kind of is there and slightly builds around the curve of the turn. That's why I kind of built it like that around that little circle curve. And yeah, so it's something that you would definitely, you can look it up. You'll see, I try to build it as best as possible. Even on the lower end, we used to have that kind of structure going on here, how it is. But essentially, they're two towers, they're twin towers, they're 750 feet each. And it's definitely a standout trait in New York City because, like I said, that area is right around Columbus Circle where, most people will go, tourists will go. So I like that. I like that whole structure of how their two buildings are actually connected on the same platform. So I thought that was interesting at 750 feet. So next we have 60 Wall Street at 745 feet tall. And that is this one. It's another unique building with a very interesting top piece, but the top really does kind of look like this with this kind of shape if you look it up. It's another one, like I said, a unique building. Obviously, at this point, it's not very tall compared to most things, but I'm sure at one point in time, at 745 feet, one point in time, many years back, it probably was considered, one of the upper end taller buildings, but obviously a lot has changed. But it's a very unique style, so I like that one a lot as well. Then come the Silver Towers. Those are these. I always would see these and thought that they were very interesting. Hold on, I'm almost knocking over buildings. I thought they're very interesting. They're very similar to the Time Warner Center ones where it's like twin buildings, but these ones are a full 100 feet shorter. Well, a little less than that, 653 versus 750, but essentially 100 feet shorter. But it's very similar, but these are residential, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why they're considerably smaller. But a little note, this building here, which was the 432 Park Avenue, which was 1,396 feet, if I'm not mistaken, was the tallest residential building in New York City, because it's all residential. I think they said some celebrities live there as well, but I don't want to shout anybody's name out. But certain celebrities live there as well. But this was residential as well, the Silver Towers, and I always thought it was an interesting building at the time. It really stood out. Since that time that they were first built, there was many other buildings that came along after it. It never was one of the tallest by the time it was built because it was built way after the year 2000. So, or no, I won't say way after the year 2000, but maybe a good like 2005 or something like that. So, it's not something that was, matter of fact, let me see. Let me look it up and see if it says when it was built. Those are 650 feet. Silver Towers, 653 feet, 2009. So yeah, those are pretty new buildings relative to the rest of the buildings on this list and whatnot. So they're not tall, but they just stood out. I just felt they stood out, especially nothing was near them that kind of stood out in that same way. Now, just because I have this set up like this kind of geographic that you see, they actually are nowhere near this Times Square area. And that is the last building actually on the list of tallest buildings in New York City at 103 in terms of their number, 103 on the list, both of them tied for 103. That is the last on my list and is actually one from the bottom of being the last on the list on Wikipedia. But I always just thought it was a fascinating building and it at least happened to make the list even though it was very near the bottom. But with that being said, I have one other building that is the next tallest of the ones that were not on that list. But I just wanted to build it because I just thought it looked nice and it stood out if you look it up. And that is that building over there. And that's called the El Dorado. And I guess it's a residential building here. And I just thought it looked nice. So if you look it up, that's the shape that it has, and it's interesting. You can look that up, the El Dorado building. It is 346 feet. And it's funny, you can see how at that point versus all the rest of these really tall ones, that difference in height, which is pretty cool just to know that you get down that low. Now I'm just going to go over a couple of other known buildings that just didn't make the cut because they just aren't that tall. So, it's surprising. The Times Square buildings didn't really make the cut either, but in this thing, I have maybe depicted them as being, maybe a little, well, they didn't make the cut of the list, so it doesn't matter. And they're not really compared to this one because actually they might be taller than this one, but I happen to just build this one and I listed it because it's a known building. But the truth is the Times Square buildings are probably actually taller than it. And so maybe I'm going to have to go and look those up and actually list them because I have them here. That is the center of Times Square. And I know it's a little hard for me to get an angle over here, but essentially, hold on while I get something to point with. Okay, so here, this is, hold on, let me make sure that's fitting in well. Some of these pieces, when I moved, the thing was kind of coming apart. This is that center of Times Square where on one side you see this building and it would have like the screens on it, and the other side you'd have that. And in between it is a big gap of space. And obviously this would depict that because on that scale level, people would be super small. But this is generally the structure shape of that. I looked it up as in detail as I could, and it does have this very odd shape where it gets very narrow at the tip. And this one does as well, though it's not as narrow as that side, but that essentially is Times Square. And since this building right here is the 4 Times Square building, this one, it's right next to it. And like I said, that area right here is like the base of like 42nd Street, coming off of Grand Central Station right there. So you could walk down the block and you get right there. It's only like about a 5 short block walk because the long blocks go up and down, north and south, and east and west are the short blocks. So that is that Times Square. And I thought that was just very interesting. Putting that into the build, I wanted to have that. Another thing too, we go over here, and obviously you can tell what that massive, big, low building is. That is Madison Square Garden with your little lights on top. That is the structure of it. I guess this is the entrance point or whatever, but there is a structure point that comes over here first and then leads to it. That takes up a big portion in the middle of Manhattan, but that is the Madison Square Garden. So I definitely wanted to put that in there because it stood out. Obviously, some of the buildings I'm going over now are not about them being super tall. They're just about standing out. This one right here, which is right next to the Empire State Building, I thought was also very interesting. That is the New York City Public Library. But the one in New York City, that particular one, is in itself a landmark, I believe, but it's definitely one of those kind of standout locations that everyone knows about. And I really try to put in that work because it does have these really big steps that go into these little arches where you walk into it. So I wanted to give that kind of little architecture. And when I looked at the top of it, it did have a structure similar to this. So if you go look it up, you'll see that it's kind of like that, where it has those indentations. So I don't make these things look like that for nothing. I did the research and I try to make it as best as possible to look like the way it does, or at least have some aspects about it that doesn't look just plain and generic, fitting to the way it actually looks, in real life. And then right behind the library is the park called Bryant Park, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me in the comments if it's been so long and I just can't remember, but I believe it's Bryant Park. And it does have this kind of little structure going around it where people can, this is like an area where people can eat, and then they got grass and stuff like that and like trees and that around it. And this is like, I think, a sitting area, if I'm not mistaken, where people are able to sit down in that center area. And it's kind of elevated, off this thing is like a platform to keeping the whole thing elevated, I think. Just look it up and you'll see what I'm saying, and you'll go, you know what he did there is somewhat fitting to what we see in the actual structure. So that in itself is pretty cool. And then another place to be noteworthy of is this right here is the American Museum of Natural History. One of my favorite places. It also, similar to the library, has a step structure with arches or pillars that it goes into. And I really did the research here also in terms of the setup of it. And you got these little kind of structures where it's holes where you can kind of see, because they have open areas at certain parts. From the best that I could see from like of a downwards view, this right here is the glass part of the solar system area. I'm forgetting the name, planetarium. I think that's what they call it. But the whole solar system planets area, it's glass and you kind of see through it. So that's why that's there, and that's the exact part that it's at in the structure. So I tried to make that look also, realistic to what it is and how it's depicted. And it's right next to Central Park. It's literally right across the street from Central Park. And obviously, once again, this is Central Park. And now it's really supposed to be a little bit more rectangular, but I just kind of worked with it and made it a square. But these bodies of water, it starts at 110th Street and goes down to 59th Street. So over here, you do have a body of water and a larger body of water inside the middle and another body of water on the side. There are a few other more bodies of water, but I don't think they're as big. So those ones kind of, show the prominent bodies of water. And these are just, supposed to depict as trees all around. And that is pretty much it for all the structures. Some of these other buildings are just kind of throw around there. I use those colors for these because over there you got a lot of those kind of like brownish buildings. I try to just give a little bit of color to things. But generally speaking, yes, just a little bit of filler space. And that is it. That is my Lego, my little Lego city of Manhattan. And sorry that I couldn't probably give you the best of views. I don't want to show everything going on around in the home, but yes, if this helps you, inspire you for any ideas, then feel free to, expand or take some of this to help you with your own builds. And like I said, I'm going to put the link in the description for the Lego architecture site sets. If it just so happens that maybe you want to do something like this, but you can't do and build it on your own, but you don't mind spending the money for the ones that they have available, then you could put yourself together a little something based on that. Or maybe even just use them as a starter place. Maybe you want to take the New York City one, use that, and then from there you build off of it, even though those ones are kind of smaller scale. So you building other buildings along with it will get a little harder because the smaller scale something is, the less wiggle room you have to actually use more broader pieces to get the scope you want. You're gonna have to start then dealing with more finer pieces to try to get what you're looking to get out of it. All right, you guys, and with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.